Well, take two. I don't know whether I fixed anything or not, but it looked like enough of you were looking at the first one to show me that things I think were going uh, properly. So, anyway, we're talking about the Book of the Law. And there's one more thing before we leave the subject of the Book of the Law that we've been doing for the last few days. Uh, and I was telling you about I started by reading the comment that the study of this book is forbidden. It is wise to destroy this copy after first reading. Whoso disregards this does so at his own risk and peril. These are most dire. Well, that sort of freaked me out when I first read it. And my first copy of the Book of the Law came back from England with a friend of mine, a guitar student, who was visiting England. And I asked him to pick me up some Crowley books if he could find any. Because in the early 70s, Crowley books were few and far between, and I couldn't go down to my local B. Dalton bookstore or any other bookstore, and there wasn't the internet. I couldn't find a copy of the Book of the Law anywhere. And so he brought me back a little paperback edition that was printed in Dublin, California. And a little blue paperback. And I read it, and the first thing I read was that comment, and that freaked me out because I had heard all sorts of wild things about Crowley. And, the story of me burning my first Book of the Law is all over the place. There's even sort of a Canadian, wonderful people at Real Time did a documentary on Crowley, and my comedy of errors of burning my first copy of the Book of the Law is in that documentary. But anyway, when I finally got initiated into the OTO in November of 1975, I asked my initiators, why did I burn my first copy of the Book of the Law? I mean, what's that about? And Phyllis Seckler said, "You've got an obedience streak in you, Lon. You're going to have to watch that." So I felt pretty good about the whole thing. And certainly, every time you pick up a beautiful little edition of the Book of the Law, well, of course, you'll have to make your own decision on what your obedience streak is. But it does sort of put you in a magical plane to think that, okay, this is an important thing, and I better read it carefully. I better get it into a deeper part of my psyche if I'm going to be at least put in a position of considering I'm only going to read it once. So, but anyway, I thought I would read a couple of the introductory words that are included in this little volume of the Book of the Law, which is published by the OTO. And this particular beautiful little edition was done in cooperation with the Magical Child publication and Magical Child bookstore in New York. And they're everywhere. You can find them everywhere. And nowadays there's no trouble finding a copy of the Book of the Law. But so this is Crowley's opening little preface to the 1926 edition. And it sort of explains things in sort of normal words. This book was dictated to me on April 8th, 9th, and 10, 1904 EV, by Iwas, a being whose nature I do not fully understand, but who described himself as, quote, the minister of Hur Par Krat, the Lord of Silence. The intents of the book prove to strict scientific demonstration that he possessed knowledge and power quite beyond anything that has been heretofore associated with human faculties. The circumstances of the dictation are described in Equinox Volume 1, Number 7, but a fuller account with an outline of the proof of the character of the book is in preparation and will be issued shortly. In a modern footnote to that, that was published as the Equinox of the Gods on page 11. The book announces a new law for mankind. It replaces the religious and moral sanctions of the past, which have everywhere broken down by a principle valid for each man and woman in the world, and self-evidently indefeasible. The spiritual revolution announced in the book has already taken place. Hardly a country where it is not openly manifest. Innocence of the true meaning of this new law has led to gross anarchy. I'm going to repeat that. Innocence of the true meaning of this new law has led to gross anarchy. I'm going to stop and digress for a second here. That's what you always hear when you say, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Does that mean, well, if everybody just did whatever they wanted, there'd be anarchy? Innocence of the true meaning of this new law has led to gross anarchy. Its conscious adoption in its proper sense is the sole cure for political, social, and racial unrest, which have brought about the World War, the catastrophe of Russia, and the threatening attitude of China, India, and Islam. This was written in 1926. Its solution of the fundamental problems of mathematics, philosophy, will establish a new epoch in history. But it must not be supposed that so potent an instrument of energy can be used without danger. I summon, therefore, by the power and authority entrusted to me, every great spirit and mind now on this planet incarnate to take effective hold of this transcendent force and apply it to the advancement of the welfare of the human race. For as the experience of these 1 and 20 years has shown, so that's 21 years since the writing in 1904. For as the experience of these 1 and 20 years has shewn too terribly, the book cannot be ignored. It has leavened mankind unaware, and man must make therefore the bread of life. Its ferment has begun to work upon the grape of thought. Man must obtain therefrom the wine of ecstasy. Come then, all ye, in the name of the Lord of the Aeon, the crowned and conquering child Haru Ra-Ha, I call ye to partake this sacrament. Know will, dare, and keep silent. And he signs it, the priest of the princes, Ankh of Nakansu. In the new year, 21, Sun in 27 degrees Scorpio, and the day of Jupiter, which is a Thursday, in Tunis. Okay. I should have just read that a little more carefully at first. I did read it, but after all these years, it just sounds, well, he's telling you right away, you know, everything's... Okay, this is the 1938 introduction. This book was dictated in Cairo between noon and 1 p.m. on 3 consecutive days, April 8th, 9th, and 10th in the year 1904. The author called himself Aiwass and claimed to be the minister of Hurpar Krat, that is, a messenger from the forces ruling the earth at present, as will be explained later on. How could he prove that he was in fact a being of a kind superior to any of the human race, and so entitled to speak with authority? Evidently, he must show knowledge and power such as no man has ever been known to possess. He showed this knowledge chiefly by the use of cipher or cryptogram, and certain passages set forth recondite facts, including some events which had yet to take place, such that no human being could possibly be aware of them. Thus, the proof of his claim exists in the manuscript itself. It is independent of any human witness. The study of these passages necessarily demands supreme human scholarship to interpret. It needs years of intense application. A great deal has still to be worked out. But enough has been discovered to justify his claim. The most skeptical intelligence is compelled to admit its truth. This matter is best studied under the Master Therian, whose years of arduous research have led him to enlightenment. On the other hand, the language of most of the book is admirably simple, clear, vigorous. No one can read it without being stricken to the very core of his being. The more than human power of Aiwass is shewn by the influence of his master and of the book upon actual events, and history fully supports the claim made by him. These facts are appreciable by everyone, but are better understood with the help of the Master Therian. The full detailed account of the events leading up to the dictation of this book, with a facsimile reproduction of the manuscript and an essay by the Master Therian, is published in the Equinox of the Gods. Now, this is what I really wanted to share today. The universe. This book explains the universe. The elements are nuit, space, that is the total of possibilities of every kind, and hadit, any point which has experience of those possibilities. I'm going to digress for a second. The other day I was walking, okay, and just imagine that I was just walking in space itself, okay? I'm walking in space. And I see a leaf on the sidewalk. And that leaf was blown and scooted across the sidewalk for a second. And I was thinking, like you do when you walk, your brain gets blood and you start thinking. That was one event in space. So there's infinite space, but that one leaf making that move within that space was one event in that space. The elements are nuit, space. That is the total of possibilities of every kind. And I was just walking around in that totality of possibilities. Nuit is like the giant jello of possibilities. And that one event was the hadit. The leaf was the hadit. And there are infinite numbers of events taking place within an infinite jello of space. Each one of us are just floating chunks of pineapple in a jar. Okay, but that's one conjunction. So I'm going to say that again. The elements are nuit, space, that is the total of possibilities of every kind, and hadit, any point which has experience of these possibilities. This idea for literary convenience is symbolized by the Egyptian goddess Nuit, a woman bending over like the arch of the night sky, and Hadit is symbolized as the winged globe at the heart of Nuit. Every event is a uniting of some one monad with one of the experiences possible to it. That leaf was one monad, and it being blown across the sidewalk was one experience possible to it. I'll repeat Crowley. Every event is a uniting of some one monad with one of the experiences possible to it. Every man and every woman is a star, that is, an aggregate of such experiences, constantly changing with each fresh event which affects him or her either consciously or subconsciously. Each one of us has thus a universe of his own. But it is the same universe for each one as soon as it includes all possible experiences. This implies the extension of consciousness to include all other consciousness. In our present state, the object that you see is never the same as the one I see. We infer that it's the same because your experience tallies with mine on so many points that the actual differences of our observations are negligible. For instance, if a friend is walking between us, you see only his left side and I see his right, but we agree that's the same man, although we may differ not only as to what we may see of his body, but as to what we know of his qualities. The conviction of identity grows stronger as we see him more and more often and get to know him better. Yet all the time, neither of us can know anything of him at all beyond the total impression made on our respective minds. The above is an extremely crude attempt to explain a system which reconciles all existing schools of philosophy. I said the other day that beginning to understand the law of Thelema, or the concepts in the Book of the Law, is not a matter of wrapping your brain around the complexities of it, but to allowing yourself to accept the simplicity of it. Finally, the law of Thelema. The footnote is Thelema is the Greek word for will and has the same numerical value as agape, the Greek for love. This book lays down a simple code of conduct. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. There is no law beyond do what thou wilt. This means that each of us stars is to move in our own true orbit, as marked out by the nature of our position, the law of our growth, and the impulse of our past experiences. All events are equally lawful, and every one necessary in the long run, for all of us in theory. If I take out that parenthetical, it says, all events are lawful for all of us in theory. But in practice, only one act is lawful for each one of us at any given moment. Therefore, duty consists in determining to experience the right event from one moment of consciousness to another. Each action or motion is an act of love uniting with one or another part of new wheat. Each such act must be, quote, under will, unquote, chosen so as to fulfill and not thwart the true nature of the being concerned. The technical methods of achieving this are to be studied in magic. And that's it's italicized magic, referring, I'm assuming, to the book 4, magic, part of which is magic in theory and practice, or acquired by personal instruction from the Master Therian and his appointed assistants. Okay. We've had a rocky Monday morning, and perhaps a false start. I'm not sure that that we didn't have technical difficulties, and I'll have to do this all again tomorrow. But I'll do something again tomorrow, or at least try. So, until then, continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.